I need you to leave me alone.
What are you talking about? You're the one that called me.
I know you have been following me after work. I saw your car.
I didn't know you were crazy and delusional. If you don't stop, you will regret it.
My name is Julia, and I'm 31 years old. My ex-husband Brian, 39 years of age, won't leave me alone. After 6 torturous months of marriage, I filed for divorce. By last October, we were officially separated. Hell, I didn't even have his last name anymore. As soon as we were married, Brian became controlling, which was far different from what he was when we were just dating. It all started with small things, such as asking me to wear certain clothes or my eating habits, but then he started cursing at me for the most random things. If I didn't answer his call after the second ring, I would get an earful of curses going my way. I couldn't win, so I decided to leave him after giving him more than a few chances. Both my parents couldn't believe I ended things because they never saw the real Brian. He would throw up his facade of a calm and collected guy, but as soon as the doors were closed, he was a psycho and a control freak. Not even my friends believed me. He had a charm to him that not many people could shake. I mean, that's how I fell in love with him. After 2 months of our official divorce, I felt a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. It would happen at odd times of the day, like I were getting ready for work or simply getting groceries for the week. I couldn't place it until one night when I was driving home from my friend Evie's house. She lives about 40 minutes away, so it's a pretty far ride. Whenever I would change lanes on the freeway, the car behind me would switch to the same lane. The first few times, I pegged it as a coincidence, but as time passed, I grew suspicious. Since it was late at night, all I could see were the headlights, and I was unable to figure out who was behind the wheel or what type of vehicle it was. This was until we reached a tunnel where golden lights would shine on the cars. When this happened, I choked on my breath. I could now recognize that this was a black sedan, a vehicle that remained similar to my ex-husband's. This couldn't be him, right? Maybe I was seeing things. But when I went to the nearest freeway exit, the car followed right behind. When I looked again in my mirror, the man wore a hat that covered half of his face. As I weaved in and out of traffic, the car swiftly followed suit. I had a few options. I could drive straight to the nearest police station or go home and risk my life. I went with the first and drove to the nearest police station. When I pulled in, the car that was behind me kept driving north, missing the turn into the station. I went inside to file a police report, but they told me they could do nothing because I didn't get a license plate number. I asked if they could check the streetlight cameras, but I was left stumped without definite evidence that someone was following me. Left defeated, I drove home. Luckily, a cop car followed me home to ensure my safety. When I entered my house, I checked every room and locked all of my doors. For the following 2 weeks, I was paranoid that I was being watched. I spoke to my divorce lawyer asking if I should contact Brian to question his whereabouts, but she advised me not to. Every once in a while, when I look in my rearview mirror, I swear I see the same sedan from that night. But when I look again, it is gone. Was I losing it? Everything got scarier when I bumped into Brian on February 12th, 3 months exactly after our divorce. I was getting coffee that's right down the street from where I work.
Hey, Julia. Long time no see.
What are you doing here?
Getting coffee? What about you?
You don't live in this city.
Neither do you.
What? How would he know what city I live in?
Come on, Julia, lighten up. Why would you live in this city? It's a bad part of the town. Are you okay?
I chuckled nervously.
How have you been?
Let's not pretend that we are going to become friends. I walked past him, but he quickly grabbed my arm, giving me a warning squeeze.
Don't walk away from me when I'm talking.
What do you want? I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry, but no one around noticed my discomfort.
I just wanted to say Happy Valentine's Day.
With that, he walked swiftly away. His voice had no malice, yet there was a hint of anger right below the surface. I told my two closest friends, Rebecca and Jenny, about the situation that night. They both thought it was hilarious. They didn't take it seriously.
It sounds like he's still in love with you.
I agree. I've told you guys before, he's dangerous, manipulative, and you don't know what I know, what I had to go through. Rebecca gave me a sad smile before taking a sip of her wine glass. You're right, we don't know, we never saw that side of him, and when you told us about it, he became a part of our life so closely, it's hard to believe it. I guess this is my fault for hiding it too well, but now I'm telling you the truth. We believe you, don't worry. Maybe you should file a restraining order. If I bump into him again, I will. There will be no questions about the severity of the situation. By February 14th, I was back at work. I was a social worker who helped out young adults between the ages of 18 to 23 years old back into the society after being in jail. Most of the kids are harmless. We usually discuss how to assimilate back into family life and how to find the right job with a criminal record. While in our group discussions, the receptionist called out my name. I looked up and saw she had a bundle of roses in a vase. "These are dropped off for you," she said with a smile. My heart sank. I quickly got up from my seat and inspected them. There in the middle was a note that read, "Happy Valentine's Day, sweetheart." I dropped the vase instantly and glass shattered everywhere. The two boys that I was working with got up.
"Miss Julia, are you okay?"
Yes, I'm fine."
"Are you sure? You don't look so good."
I swallowed the bile that was rising from my throat. "Yes, I'm okay," I tried to say with more confidence. I began helping the receptionist with the broken glass and roses. I decided to dismiss the meeting early as I was too frazzled to continue. I went straight to the police station. When I told them about the incident and our prior history, they were as concerned as I was. But when the police officer taking the report put my name and Brian's in the computer to begin the process, she began to frown. I had enough of Brian's games. "There is already a report." What do you mean?"
"Brian, your ex-husband filed a restraining order against you a few hours ago."
I couldn't believe it. He was more deranged than I thought. In his report, he said, I followed him to a coffee shop and have been lurking by his house. I don't even know where he lives, but it's his word against mine. It only got worse. I swear I would see Brian's car a few lanes over following me after work. I don't even know how he found out where I work or what city I live in. He was a stalker. Sometime around 6 p.m., right after I get off from work, I see a man through my window, standing against a light post, appearing to be looking straight at me. I'm afraid to say anything. I can't see the face. After 5 minutes or so, he leaves without a word. I called 911 the second time, but they said that's not a crime or an emergency. The world is against me. It has to be. I decided that I had enough. I called Brian to settle this once and for all. The phone rang only once.
Hi, darling.
His voice was so condescending.
See, is it that hard to answer your phone after the first ring?
I need you to leave me alone.
What are you talking about? You're the one that called me.
I know you have been following me after work. I saw your car.
I didn't know you were crazy and delusional.
If you don't stop, you will regret it.
Huh, what are you going to do about it?
You'll see. And by the way, stop coming by my house. He laughed even louder. I decided to stay with my parents next week, so I wouldn't have to see his creepy face. I installed cameras at my house just in case I decided to make a guest appearance while I was away. When I told my parents about everything, they reacted the same way Rebecca and Jenny did. They're supportive, but they still see Brian as a good guy. Things only got worse. He didn't even care to hide anymore. He began actively following me while I walked to the coffee shop during my lunch break. Of course, he kept his distance because of the restraining he enacted, but it didn't help me in any way. While the two boys I was working with talked about their first days working at a fast food restaurant, my left eye began to twitch. I had seen Brian twice already, once while driving to work and in the parking lot while walking inside the building. After a month of torture and stalking, I lost it at work.
Miss Julia, are you okay?
Yes, of course. Why are you asking?
Your eye is twitching.
I couldn't hold it in anymore. I began to cry. Scratch that! I began to sob uncontrollably. Both boys put their hands on my shoulders and gave me a gentle squeeze. I needed that.
What's wrong? Is there anything we can do to help?
No. This is extremely unprofessional and inappropriate. I'm sorry. I began drying my eyes with my cardigan sleeve.
You have done a lot for us. At least tell us what's the matter.
So I told them everything. These two young men allowed me to take their time and spill my drama with my ex-husband.
He's a disgusting human being, and the police have done nothing?
I shook my head.
Of course they wouldn't. When did you ever help out the little guy? We can. We can do what? Help the little guy.
He was scheming something. I knew it. This is not your problem. Don't worry about me, okay? Brian is harmless. He won't physically hurt me.
You don't know that.
You boys have just escaped jail for petty crimes. I want you to succeed in life.
Don't worry, Miss Julia. Danny and I won't touch him.
He began to smile.
We aren't? Of course not.
And Mikhail left it at that. All he said next was, "Tomorrow after work, I go down to an address that so happens to be the next town over, and that things would be taken care of." This was illegal and 100% not okay, but Mikhail promised that he wouldn't lay a finger on him or do anything. The rest of the day, I told myself I wasn't going to do it. I couldn't, but that night crossed the line even for Brian. As I said, I installed cameras outside my house, and while I was sleeping, my phone dug off, signaling movement on my front porch. When I looked at my camera there, lo and behold, I saw a man standing in front of the camera with a black cap and a face mask. Chills ran up and down my spine. Why was he doing this? He stood there for only a minute, staring intensely into the camera, and suddenly he walked away. I had had enough of his antiques. He followed me to work on my lunch break and stalked my home, and no matter how many times I informed the police, no one seemed to hear my side of the story. I decided I was going to take up Mikhail's offer. I did my daily routine, going to grab my coffee before work, and of course, Brian was a few feet away watching me when I ordered my drink. His car was always a few lanes away when driving to work. Mikhail and Danny said nothing about the plan they spoke about yesterday, and for a second, I was afraid they may have forgotten. But before our check-in ended, Danny said, "See you later today." I nodded, my heart racing at the thought. What are they going to do? I did what I was told. I left work and ensured Brian was following me, which he was. When we entered the next town over, he made no effort to stay a few lanes away from me. This was a break from my routine of work and home. I followed the navigation to the T and wound up at a nearby alleyway. It was dark and dim by the time I got there. It smelled like a sewer drain, must have been nearby as well. This was it. It was now or never. I parked my car and exited it. Taking the lead in walking down the alleyway, I could hear Brian's car door open and shut with the car key button dinging off, ensuring it was locked from the introducer. He followed slowly behind me.
"Julia, what are you doing here? This isn't safe."
I was reaching the end of the alleyway when a man in a ski mask approached me. I couldn't help but quietly laugh to myself. Perhaps it was out of grace or anticipation. I wanted to scream, but instead, the man put a finger to his lips and whispered, "It's Danny." Before I could say anything, I heard Brian began to yell, "Get away from her!" Two other men came up beside Danny on either side and walked past me towards Brian, who was pretty close behind.
"Give me your wallet."
Brian began to yell for help, but I didn't turn towards the noise. Danny led me to the end of the alleyway where we met up with Miguel. Who are those two men?
"A friend of a friend of a friend."
I began to hear screams from Brian, accompanied by punches and kicks to his side. I almost felt bad. Almost. They're not going to kill him, right?
Of course not. What kind of ex-convicts do you think we are?
The beating lasted for a few more minutes. By then, I circled the building and found my ex-husband leaning against a garbage can. He had bruises all over his body.
"How did you... They took my cell phone, keys, and my wallet."
"That's too bad."
"Please, help me. Call an ambulance."
I leaned in closer only by a few inches and began to smirk. "I told you, you were going to regret it." His eyes widened in fear. "And it will only get worse if you go to the police." And with that, I stood up and left him there. After that night, I didn't hear about Brian until after a few years, when I stumbled on his social media account. He has married again. Funnily or sadly enough, he married the nurse on duty when he went in after his burglary. They looked genuinely happy, but if you have learned anything from my story, you would now know looks can be deceiving.